Hello everyone. Today's topic is in continuation with the previous topic of drugs acting on thyroid gland, and today we'll be discussing about the thyroid inhibitors. Let us start with today's topic. The learning objectives are, by the end of this lecture you would be knowing the pharmacology of the thyroid inhibitors and the treatment of hyperthyroidism and thyroid storm. Thyroid inhibitors are drugs which lower the functional capacity of hyperactive thyroid gland. However, these drugs can also decrease the functional activity of normally functioning thyroid gland. Let us see the mechanism of action of thyroid inhibitors. We have already seen how thyroid hormone is synthesized in the thyroid gland. So iodide enters into the thyroid follicles with the help of a specialized transporter which requires energy, and the iodide is concentrated against the concentration gradient. This process is inhibited by thiocyanate and perchlorate. The iodide that enters into the thyroid follicles is converted into hypoiodate in the presence of peroxidase enzyme. This step is inhibited by thioamides. The hypoiodate then combines with the tyrosyl residue of thyroglobulin to form monoiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine. Both of these conjugate or combine with each other to form T3 and T4. This step is inhibited by iodides as well as thioamides. The thyroglobulin attached with the active hormones acts as a storehouse of these hormones, and upon proteolysis the T3 and T4 are released, which upon exocytosis enter into the blood. This step of proteolysis is inhibited by iodides. The T4 that enters into the blood is converted into T3 by deiodination, which is inhibited by many drugs like iodinated contrast media, beta blockers, amiodarone, thioamides, also lithium and glucocorticoids. These drugs are known as goitrogens because once the synthesis of hormone is inhibited, the TSH levels in the body increase as a feedback, negative feedback, and this TSH will now act on thyroid gland to increase its size and vascularity. Therefore, there is visible increase in the size of thyroid gland, which is known as goiter. The thyroid inhibitors, as we have already seen, they can be classified depending upon their mechanism of action as those that inhibit the hormone synthesis, which are also known as antithyroid drugs. These are thioamides, propylthiouracil, methimazole and carbimazole. The inhibitors of iodide trappings are the ionic inhibitors. They are thiocyanates, perchlorates and nitrates. The drugs that inhibit the hormone release from the thyroid gland, they are iodine, iodides of sodium and potassium, and organic iodide. The drugs that destroy the thyroid tissue and thus the formation of thyroid hormone is radioactive iodine. Thioamides are also known as antithyroid drugs among the thyroid inhibitors. The mechanism of action of thioamides is these drugs inhibit the peroxidase enzyme. This peroxidase enzyme is required for two important processes. One is the conversion of iodide into hypoiodate, and the other is iodination of tyrosyl residues of thyroglobulin and coupling of monoiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine with each other to form T3 and T4. In addition to this, propylthiouracil, which is one of the thioamides, it inhibits the peripheral deiodination of T3 into more active T4 into more active T3 thyroid hormone. Methimazole is similar to propylthiouracil. The only difference is that it doesn't cause the peripheral deiodination of T4. Carbimazole is the carb ethoxy derivative of methimazole. The differences of propylthiouracil versus methimazole, both of which are thioamides, is given in this slide. Propylthiouracil has half-life of 75 minutes only as compared to 4 to 6 hours of methimazole, which means the frequency of administration of propylthiouracil required is more. Propylthiouracil does not cross the milk as well as the placental barrier, due to which it is safe during pregnancy as well as during breastfeeding, as compared to methimazole, which crosses both these barriers. Propylthiouracil also inhibits the peripheral deiodination of T4 to a more active hormone, that is T3, which is not seen with methimazole. This property is important when rapid control over the thyrotoxicosis is required, wherein high levels of release of T4 from thyroid gland will cause more conversion of T4 to T3 and more toxicity. Propylthiouracil is more plasma protein bound as compared to methimazole. Both of these drugs are rapidly absorbed orally and are concentrated in the thyroid gland. These drugs are mainly used for hyperthyroidism, and these drugs, when given, will show its effect after 12 weeks of treatment. This is because once these drugs are given, the synthesis of new thyroid hormone is inhibited, but the thyroid hormone stores inside the thyroid gland keep on releasing the thyroid hormone in the blood. Once this storage in the thyroid gland is exhausted, then only the effect of these drugs is seen. Failure for treatment of hyperthyroidism is generally due to non-compliance. So in hyperthyroidism, the treatment takes several weeks and then improvement is seen, as already discussed. Patients with large or multinodular goiter respond slowly as compared to those with single nodular goiter. Large dosages may sometimes result in hypothyroidism, wherein there is deficiency of thyroid hormone. The thyroid function test need to be done every 2 to 4 months to follow for occurrence of hypothyroidism or control of hyperthyroidism. Once euthyroidism is established, that is, the concentration of thyroid hormone and TSH are in normal range, there is a reduction of goiter seen, and the follow-up should be then reduced to 4 to 6 monthly. The remission by giving treatment with thioamides is around 50% after treatment for 1 year, while the others might require the treatment indefinitely. Very rarely, small percentage of patients will show remission after long duration of treatment. The persistence of goiter indicates failure of treatment, and therefore these drugs should be discontinued. The adverse effects are divided into mild and severe. The mild adverse effects are drug fever, pruritus, urticaria, edema of feet, joint pain and lymphadenopathy. The serious adverse effects are related to blood. These are leukopenia, thrombocytopenia and agranulocytosis. The agranulocytosis is a rare adverse effect and it is concentration dependent in case of methimazole. Liver damage is also one of the adverse effects, serious adverse effects seen with these drugs. The patients, when on thiamide, should be asked to look for sore throat, fever or oral ulcerations, which might be a sign of severe adverse effect like agranulocytosis. Hypothyroidism can occur at high dosages, due to which the thyroid hormone synthesis is less than required, and if the dosages are lower as compared to those that should be prescribed, the failure of treatment might occur. But when the proper dosages are given, there is risk of hypothyroidism. The ionic inhibitors, these group of drugs interfere with the concentration of iodide by the thyroid gland, that is the iodide trapping. These drugs resemble at molecular level with the iodide, due to which they block the channel and lead to iodide trapping. Certain foods like cabbage, cigarette smoking, these increase the concentration of thiocyanate in the blood and urine and can cause the inhibition of iodide trapping. Therefore, these cabbage is known as a goitrogen. Perchlorate among the ionic inhibitors is 10 times as active as the thiocyanate. Thiocyanate, being toxic, is no longer used, but the perchlorate is still used because of being cheap as well as having a good adverse effect profile. So potassium perchlorate is the salt of perchlorate, which can be used as an alternative when the patients are allergic to thioamides. The other ions that can cause inhibition of iodide trapping are fluorate, lithium and amiodarone. Iodides are the oldest group of drugs used as antithyroid drugs. These drugs inhibit the synthesis as well as release of thyroid hormones from the thyroid gland. Therefore, they are said to cause thyroid constipation, and this action is very rapid, that it occurs within 24 hours of administration, and the maximum effect is seen in 10 to 15 days. The Wolff-Chaikoff effect is seen with this agent because of its acute inhibition of synthesis of the iodotyrosines, that is monoiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine, and the thyroid hormone. This ion also reduces vascularity, firmness and size of the gland, and after continuation of treatment, rebound is seen because the iodide itself is the precursor of thyroid hormone, and the escape phenomenon will lead to thyrotoxicosis later on. But because these ions decrease the vascularity, firmness and size of gland as well as they inhibit the synthesis of the gland at the acute phase, these drugs are preferred for preparation of surgery for thyroid gland. The major limitations of use of iodide is that their beneficial effect disappears after some time, and after continuation of therapy, hyperthyroidism may return to its initial intensity or may even worsen. Lugol's iodine is a solution that contains 5% iodine and 10% potassium iodide. This solution has the same activity like the iodide, and its use is similar to that of iodide. The adverse effects seen due to these agents are the chronic intoxication can cause iodism, that is the excess of iodine in the body leading to skin rash, rhinorrhea, lacrimation and salivation. Thyrotoxicosis can be seen with potassium perchlorate. Goiter or cretinism is seen in children because these drugs when given during pregnancy or lactation can cross the milk barrier or placenta to lead to cause deficiency of thyroid hormones that can cause goiter or cretinism. Another effect that is seen with this drug is Jod-Bedsaw effect, which is the precipitation of thyrotoxicosis in patients of goiter. So when the patients of goiter are treated, they are already having high levels of thyroid stimulating hormone, and once they get the iodide that was deficient, it leads to skyrocketing formation of the thyroid hormone, which leads to thyrotoxicosis. And this generally occurs when the patients of goiter are treated with iodine containing contrast media or amiodarone, which in itself contains high amount of iodine. The important uses of iodides are: one is the thyrotoxicosis crisis. So these drugs are given so that the further release of thyroid hormone and synthesis is inhibited. So little stores of hormones are present in the thyroid gland in patients of thyrotoxicosis. This is the advantageous thing because the thyroid gland does not have any thyroid hormone store, and as these iodides are given, the further release of thyroid gland thyroid hormone is inhibited, as well as the synthesis is also inhibited. Treatment with thiamide should be followed by administration of iodide, because the escape phenomenon of iodine, which can lead to further synthesis of thyroid hormone, can be inhibited by thioamides. Preparations of patients for thyroidectomy: for this indication also we give iodides along with thioamides. The advantage is that iodides cause decrease in vascularity and firmness of the thyroid gland, which makes it easy to dissect and remove the thyroid gland. We can also use T4 instead of iodide. T4 will inhibit the increased TSH levels, and that can help with the decrease in the thyroid gland size. In case of endemic goiter, iodine is used because there is deficiency of iodine in the geographical area where this kind of goiter occurs. So supplying iodine in the form of iodized salt can lead to increase in the synthesis of thyroid hormone, and the goiter itself regresses because of formation of thyroid hormone. Protection of thyroid gland from accidental exposure to radioactive iodine. So if the patient is inadvertently and accidentally exposed to radioactive iodine, giving iodides will not allow the radioactive iodine to enter into the thyroid gland, and thus the radioactive destruction of thyroid gland will be prevented. Coming to radioactive iodine, the radioactive iodine 131 is the most commonly used iodine. It emits both gamma and beta radiation. Gamma radiation can be captured by the gamma cameras, and which are used for the thyroid scan, in which we can see where the radioactive iodine is entering into the body and where it is concentrated. Beta particles destroy the follicles and impair the regenerating capacity of these follicles and produce fibrosis of the thyroid glands. Because iodine has a property to concentrate into thyroid gland, it will be selectively taken up by thyroid gland, and the tissues will be destroyed by the beta radiation. The T-half of this drug is 8 days. Therefore, most of the drug will be eliminated from the body within 56 days. When the adequate dosages of radioactive iodine is given orally, it is generally given on empty stomach, and the patient is asked to dispose of the urine and fecal matter so that it does not come in contact with any person, and to remain away from children for 2 weeks. This is to prevent the hazardous radioactive iodine to come in contact with other people. The effect of these drugs is seen after 3 to 4 weeks, and the peak effect is seen after 3 to 6 months, which is delayed as compared to the thioamides. Half of the people who are treated with this drug become euthyroid in a single dose, and those who do not show effects can be later on given second or third dose. So for that we will have to wait for 4 to 6 months, because the peak effect is seen at 3 to 6 months, and after that if the patient is showing symptoms of hyperthyroidism, the second dose may be given. The adverse drug reactions with radioactive iodine are focal soreness of throat and transient hyperthyroid state. The hypothyroidism is later on seen in 40 to 60% of patients. The hyperthyroid status is seen because of destruction of thyroid gland, so that the stores might be released, and which can cause transient hyperthyroid status. If given in pregnant woman, it can cause damage to the fetal thyroid gland, leading to hypothyroidism, and in children or fetus leading to cretinism. In some patients, thyroid carcinoma can occur, and children are more susceptible. Therefore, in children, pregnant women and lactating women, radioiodine is contraindicated. The uses of radioiodine are hyperthyroidism, metastatic carcinoma of thyroid, because these tissues will secrete excess of thyroid hormone. Destruction of such tissues will lead to inhibition of or destruction of tissues, leading to decreased thyroid hormone synthesis. These drugs are also used for diagnostic purposes, that is whether the patient is suffering from what kind of hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism or goiter. They are differentiated as hot or cold nodule. Hot meaning the radioiodine is taken up by the nodule, and therefore it shows that it is an active nodule which can functionally secrete thyroid hormone, while a cold nodule meaning that the tissue is not having any thyroid follicle like function. The ectopic thyroid tissue can also be seen in full thyroid scan, full body scan by this radioiodine. Any ectopic thyroid tissue will be seen as a hot area, which means that it is actively taking up the iodide from the body. Metastatic thyroid tumors can also be detected, because they will also again take up the iodine. Coming to the treatment of hyperthyroidism, the thyrotoxicosis can be of can have two causes. Remember, thyrotoxicosis is excess of thyroid hormone which leads to the toxic effects of this hormone. This can be due to two reasons. Either there is excess hormone production, like in Graves' disease. Graves' disease is a disease of hyperthyroidism in which there is autoimmune antibodies which act on TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone receptors, leading to excess of thyroid hormone production. Toxic nodule is an autonomous nodule which, in absence of TSH stimulation, also leads to thyroid hormone synthesis. So excess of this hormone synthesis is one of the type of thyrotoxicosis, and upon the radioiodine scan, elevated uptake of this radioiodine can be seen. In such case, surgery or treatment with radioactive iodine is the treatment of choice. When thyrotoxicosis is present but there is no hormone overproduction, in such case the reason of thyrotoxicosis can be the inflammation of thyroid gland that leads to release of the stored thyroid hormone. So this thyroiditis can be either autoimmune or infective in nature, and the overproduction might also be due to the treatment of overdosages of thyroid hormone itself. In such cases of thyrotoxicosis, withdrawal of treatment would be the best option when it is due to overdose of the drug, and the supportive treatment of the thyroiditis is important. Surgery or radioactive iodine are not to be preferred in such cases. Therefore, the treatment modalities that we now have for this hyperthyroidism are antithyroid drugs, radioactive iodine, surgery, and supportive measures. While considering thiamides as a treatment option for treatment of hyperthyroidism, the advantages that we have is that these drugs are well tolerated. They show its effect within 2 weeks, and the peak effect of euthyroid status is seen within 2 to 3 months. The hypothyroidism that it can cause due to overdosages is reversible. It is safe in children and pregnancy, particularly propylthiouracil, which does not cross the placental barrier and milk barrier. The therapeutic test, when it does not indicate to any diagnosis, still we can use thioamides, which are safer, and it does not aggravate exophthalmos in Graves' disease. The disadvantage is that these drugs are to be given for a prolonged time, and follow-up also needs to be done for a long time. Recurrence of hyperthyroidism is seen in 40 to 60% of patients in whom surgery or radioiodine treatment might be required. Rarely it can cause agranulocytosis, which is a very severe and life-threatening adverse effect. Comparing it with radioiodine, the advantages are that it is a very safe option. No other tissue is damaged except for thyroid gland. The treatment of choice where surgery is contraindicated. Say for example, metastatic carcinoma or unresectable thyroid gland. The cost of radioiodine is less because only 1 or 2 dosages are to be given, and hospitalization is not required. Even it can be given on OPD basis, and recurrence of the hyperthyroidism does not occur once the patient is euthyroid, because the tissue is destroyed by this radioiodine. The disadvantages are that there is high incidence of delayed hypothyroidism, and this might not be a good option for children, but in elderly we can give radioiodine, and the hypothyroidism that sets in can be treated with thyroid hormone. It is a slow acting drug and it takes around 4 to 6 months to show its peak effect. Therefore, the treatment is followed by use of antithyroid drug, which will show earlier effect. A long-term follow-up of these patients is required, as seen with thioamides. The patients, these drugs are not to be given in pregnancy because it can cause destruction of the fetal thyroid gland. There is always a risk of thyroid carcinoma later on, and the facilities to handle radioactive iodine are required. Being a radioactive substance, the radioactivity can cause damages to anyone who comes in contact with radioiodine. So what are the indications of antithyroid drugs in patients of hyperthyroidism? These are first of all children, where we should not use radioiodine, which can cause destruction of thyroid gland early in life and leading to hypothyroidism. In pregnant women, we do not prefer radioiodine because it will cause fetal destruction of thyroid gland. We also have methimazole and carbimazole that can cross the placental barrier and cause fetal hypothyroidism. Therefore, the only option that we have for pregnant women is propylthiouracil, which does not cross the placental barrier and will not show cretinism or fetal hypothyroidism in these women. In young adults with small goiters and patients with mild hyperthyroidism, the antithyroid drugs suffice, and the radioiodine is not required in such cases, which can cause permanent destruction of the tissues. And also, these kind of patients will have high chances of remission with antithyroid hormone drugs alone. These drugs are also given along with radioiodine, because radioiodine requires a prolonged treatment, and the immediate effect is not seen with radioiodine. The antithyroid drugs can supplement the early effects. It show its early effect and be useful as a supplementation with radioiodine. These drugs are also given before thyroidectomy to decrease the thyroid hormone synthesis, which so that the stores of the thyroid hormone in the body are reduced, and such reduced stores will not show an exaggerated increase in release of thyroid hormone in the body during surgery. The second advantage is that use of propylthiouracil will also inhibit the conversion of T4 to T3, which is an active hormone, leading to more toxic effects of the thyroid hormone that can be inadvertently released during the surgery. So what are the indications of radioiodine in the treatment of hyperthyroidism? These are patients with older age. These patients are to be treated with thiamide first, so that the destruction of thyroid tissue that will cause release of thyroid hormone in excess will be taken care by thiamides. Thiamides will act both ways, that is, they will decrease the T4 to T3 conversion as well as prevent the further synthesis of thyroid hormone that might later on be released into the circulation. Hyperthyroidism in patients with heart disease, they are also preferred. There also radioiodine is preferred. When the antithyroid drug treatment does not show any remission, in such cases also radioiodine is used. Even in patients with allergy to thiamides, radioiodine can be used. Patients with toxic nodular goiter, wherein this nodule will not regress with thiamides, treatment with radioiodine is preferred. Patients with Graves' disease, patients with persistent Graves' disease or recurrence of the disease after subtotal thyroidectomy, in such cases also the radioiodine is used to kill the remaining thyroid tissue, which can lead to again hyperthyroidism. In patients who are young but they are having many medical complications and having short life expectancy, and where surgery is contraindicated, in such rare conditions radioiodine can be used. So what are the indications of surgery in hyperthyroidism? These are multinodular toxic goiter, solitary toxic nodule, large diffuse toxic goiter which has failed to regress with the thiamide treatment, then reoccurrence after adequate treatment. So these two things mean the same. After giving thiamide or radioactive iodine, the reoccurrence has occurred. In such cases surgery is also opted. And when malignancy of thyroid gland cannot be ruled out, in such cases also surgery is preferred. The supportive treatment is required because hyperthyroidism will show its symptoms, and they will not go off by itself after giving the thyroid inhibitors alone. So for anxiety, sedatives are given. To avoid osteoporosis because of decrease in the thyroid levels after treatment, calcium supplementation is given. The adrenergic symptoms can be treated with propranolol. The treatment of congestive heart failure and atrial fibrillation is to be given accordingly. Propranolol is the preferred drug in both the cases, and vitamin supplements are also required. Coming to thyrotoxicosis or thyrotoxic crisis is a condition in which there is excess of thyroid hormone released into the circulation all of a sudden. This can be due to surgical or medical reasons. Surgical storm is seen when during thyroidectomy there is a sudden release of thyroid hormone from the stores of thyroid gland into the circulation. Medical storm is seen due to reasons unrelated to the surgery of thyroid gland. This can be due to drugs. This can be due to inflammation of thyroid in the form of autoimmune thyroiditis or infection or thyrotoxic drugs. It can also be due to stressors like stress, trauma, diabetic ketoacidosis and heart disease. Thyrotoxic crisis can be again typed into type 1 and type 2. So type 1 meaning that there is increased synthesis of hormone. This can be drug induced like amiodarone, which contains excess of iodine in it, can lead to increased hormone synthesis, and in such cases drugs that inhibit hormone synthesis are preferred, like thioamides. The type 2 thyrotoxic crisis is generally seen when there is increased release of hormone. So this is in such patients, they do not suffer from hyperthyroidism, and in such cases glucocorticoids are given, which will inhibit the conversion of T4 to T3. The manifestations of thyrotoxic crisis are the pharmacological extension of the action of thyroid hormone. These are tachycardia, irritability and delirium. Dehydration occur due to vomiting, diarrhea as well as hyperpyrexia. The treatment of thyrotoxic crisis is first of all treatment of the precipitating cause if it is found, then use of high dosages of antithyroid drugs wherein propylthiouracil is preferred, which also inhibits the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3, in addition to its effect of decrease in synthesis of thyroid hormone in the thyroid gland. The iodides are given by IV route or nasogastric tube, which will help in the thyroid constipation, that the further release of thyroid hormone from the gland is inhibited, and these drugs are to be given after the first dose of antithyroid drugs, so that the iodides itself are not the cause of further synthesis of thyroid hormone. Radiographic contrast dyes may be used to block the release of thyroid hormones which contain iodine, which act like iodides, but these are contraindicated in pregnancy, in whom propylthiouracil can be used. Supportive treatment in the patients of thyrotoxic crisis is given. IV fluids are given for dehydration as well as replenishment of the electrolytes and glucose. Antipyretics like paracetamol and cold sponging is done for hyperpyrexia. Sedatives are given to calm the patient and make him less irritable. Beta blockers antagonize the adrenergic effects that are seen due to the thyroid hormone excess. Propranolol, atenolol or calcium channel blockers can also be given to control the tachycardias and other arrhythmias like supraventricular tachycardias. The patients with thyrotoxic crisis will also show adrenergic insufficiency, for which dexamethasone can be given, and antimicrobial agents are also to be given. The respiratory as well as cardiovascular support is to be given according to the condition of the patients. Patient might also require oxygen, and all this treatment is given in an intensive care unit. The references that I have used for this topic is Satoskar and KD Tripathi. That is all for today. Thank you.